You arrive in the 11th century thinking snacks and a smile will get you through. There's no Wi-Fi, no Google Translate, and definitely no one impressed by your pants. The only welcome you get is a rock thrown by a child and a goose with boundary issues. This might take some adjusting. The road ahead is just dirt and something squishy now living in your shoe. But you're here now, in the mud, the mystery, and the madness of the Middle Ages. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's see how long you last before history throws another rock. You arrive in the ruins with a power bank at 20%, 2 granola bars, and the firm belief that charisma and a confident walk can get you through anything. That belief dies the moment you smell the air. Burnt plastic, old oil, and something meat adjacent. Whatever's left of civilization isn't impressed by your waterproof jacket. The town, if you can call a half dozen leaning structures and a pile of tires that is smaller than you expected. Not in a quaint, hidden gem kind of way. Just small. Like it gave up halfway through being a place. You pass a woman hammering rust off metal sheets, a guy dragging a mutated leg of something across the dust, and a kid chasing a rat on wheels. You nod. They don't. It's not personal. No one here has energy for polite. And you, with clean shoes and all your teeth, look suspiciously edible. You try asking for directions with a mix of mime and nervous laughter. The man beside a cart of batteries squints at you, mutters something between a curse and a recipe, then returns to duct taping a blender to a car battery. Everything looks the same: rusted sheet metal, broken doors, sand. You pick one building and step inside. It's not a house. It's unclear. A goat, or something goat-adjacent, lifts its head from the corner and stares you down like it knows your browser history. You back out slowly. The door creaks closed behind you, sealing the embarrassment in. There's no map, no signs, no grizzled elder offering exposition, just the growing awareness that your shoes were a mistake and your snacks won't last the night. A crow on a broken street lamp tilts its head at you, judging. You tell it to mind its business. It does not. Eventually, you find what passes for a market, tarp-covered stalls, yelling, something sizzling that may once have walked on 4 legs. You pass jars of mystery pills, baskets of half-working tech, and a woman selling immortality crystals, which are just shiny gravel with confidence. A man grabs your sleeve, offers you a pouch labeled simply, "Stuff." You hesitate. He stares. You buy it. It's unclear what it is. It felt rude not to. You finally hear music. Not good music, but loud. There's laughter, shouting, and the universal sound of a chair breaking. No sign says bar, but your soul knows. You step in. The smell hits you first. Smoke, oil, and sweat that's lived too long in one shirt. They all turn to look. You shrug in a way that says, "Yeah, I'm lost." A big man near the fire grins. "Fresh." You nod. He laughs. You've passed something. They hand you a cup. You drink. It's warm, bitter, and tastes like gasoline made emotional. You say, "Interesting." They cheer. You are now interesting. Someone hands you bread. It has texture. Someone else offers stew. You eat it, not because you're hungry, but because in this place, declining food feels like a mistake with consequences. You hover near the soap yeller's cart like it might explain the plot. It doesn't. It just keeps yelling loudly about lard purity and divine foam. Someone elbows past you, muttering about outsiders. You nod apologetically like that helps. You try to blend in by buying something, anything, and end up with what might be a turnip or might be a root vegetable that's legally distinct from food. You thank the merchant. He spits near your shoe. Unclear if it's a blessing. A group gathers near a makeshift stage. A man in a cloak stands atop it with theatrical energy and teeth too white for this century. He announces something about a missing goat, a local tax, and a dance happening at the full moon. You understand 3 words and clap anyway. Everyone claps. Peer pressure is eternal. Suddenly you hear your name, or something close enough to trigger fight or flight. It's Mira. She's found you. She gestures curtly. You follow her back through the crowd like a poorly trained pet, holding your maybe turnip like it's a gift for peace talks. Back at the barn, she hands you a sack and points at the woods. Mushrooms, she says. You open your mouth to ask, which kind? But she's already gone. The woods are damp, dark, noisy in a quiet way. You pick the mushrooms that seem least aggressive looking. One glows faintly. You put that one back. Somewhere between tree roots and low-hanging branches, it hits you. Not just the smell of wet earth, but the realization. This is your life now. No signal, no comfort, no oat milk lattes, just manual labor, ambient goat noises, and a social structure based entirely on how well you pretend to know what you're doing. You return with your harvest. Mira inspects it, says nothing, but doesn't slap it out of your hands, which is probably praise. You're tired, you're muddy, you're about 38% sure you've ingested medieval bacteria. But for now, you're still here, still tolerated, still learning the language of silence, shrugs, and slightly suspicious bread. A merchant catches your eye and gestures toward a bowl of berries. You smile, eager for something sweet. He hands you one. You eat it. Then he says something sharp and holds out his hand. Right. Welcome to medieval economics. You eat them quickly and walk away before he reconsiders. A small win. You tell yourself you're adapting, that you're bartering like a seasoned traveler. In truth, you're bartering like someone who'll be barefoot by Thursday. Out of nowhere, an old woman with a back like a question mark grabs your sleeve and starts rapid-firing medieval gibberish at you. She points at a sack, then at your chest. You nod. Always nod. She hands you the sack. It smells like dried fish and sorrow. You deliver it across the road to a man with one eye and zero charm. He accepts it and gives you a boiled egg. You hold it like a peace offering from a neighboring kingdom. Back at the barn, Mira sees the dirt on your boots, the fish smell in your coat, and the egg in your hand. She raises an eyebrow, says something short. You shrug. She snorts, her version of a laugh maybe, and hands you a bowl of stew. You eat without asking what's in it. The broth is warm. The meat is chewy. You decide it's best not to know. The boy sits beside you, dragging a stick through the dirt. He draws a tall person, you, probably, and a goat kicking said person. Definitely you. The sun starts fading early, shadows stretching across the village like they're trying to leave first. You fetch water, chop roots, tie bundles of firewood under the boy's stern supervision. He ties with grace. You tie like someone trying to remember how hands work. He laughs. You let him. That night, as dusk settles and the village exhales smoke from every chimney, you sit outside the barn on a creaky stool and watch the sky bloom purple and orange. Ember the dog settles at your feet, snoring like it's a personal insult to the silence. And just before everything goes black, you whisper to no one, I didn't die. I didn't ruin anything. And I got paid in an egg. That's practically a promotion. Then, sometime in the night, Ember shuffles up and curls into your back like a warm, wheezing boulder. You try to move. He growls. You apologize. He stretches. You spend the next hour paralyzed in barn dog spooning, wondering how your life got here. By morning, your spine is a question mark, and your pillow has resigned. Mira hands you bread hard enough to break a window. You chew. Slowly. The boy is chasing the same chicken again. The chicken is still undefeated. Without warning, Mira marches you into the fields, hands you a basket, and points to the weeds. No instruction, no encouragement, just the cold confidence of someone who's seen cities fall. You pull weeds. Poorly. Mira doesn't correct you, she just moves further away, which somehow stings more. Eventually, you find a rhythm. Bend, pull, doubt all your choices. Repeat. You stretch and look around. Hills in the distance, streams winding like lazy questions, smoke curling up like thoughts. It's beautiful, but also sharp. This land takes more than it gives, and still, you can't look away. Lunch is turnip stew. Again, Mira says it tastes better today. She's wrong, but you nod. The boy tosses in wild herbs from who knows where. Mira watches you. You eat it anyway. You survive. Barely. That's test number 3 passed. Eat mystery plants without dying on the spot. Then, just when you think the day's done, you're volunteered to help rethatch a neighbor's roof. You try to explain your total lack of roofing credentials. No one cares. You're handed a bundle of thatch and a look that says, "Figure it out." You climb a ladder made of wood in very sketchy confidence, tie things where others tie things, and pretend you're doing it right. Someone grunts approvingly. You take that as a 5-star review. A rooster walks under the ladder, and everyone gasps like death itself just strutted through the yard. Apparently, that's very bad luck. You ask, "What kind of luck is it if I fall and break my neck after the rooster walks under?" Mira squints at you. "Stupid luck." Fair enough. You finish your part on the roof, climb down, and kiss the ground when no one's watching. Ember licks your face in what you decide is either forgiveness or amusement. Evening rolls in quick. The sky turns lavender and the light softens, sideways, golden, like it's remembering something it won't share. Mira makes rice tonight. Real rice, not the usual mashed question mark. You don't ask where it came from. You just eat it reverently while the boy tells a story about a hero and a magical goat. Mira doesn't interrupt. She even smiles, which means the story is sacred. After dinner, you scrub pots with cold water and cloth feels like tree bark. Your hands go numb. But your thoughts, strangely, settle. The silence between you and Mira starts to feel almost companionable. She doesn't flinch when you pass her the clean bowl. She just nods. Ember snores, the boy hums. The world doesn't end, it just gets quiet. Later, you sit outside while they turn in. The stars arrive slowly, shy little sparks in the deepening dark. No city glow, no engine noise, just crickets, wind, and someone far away yelling at a pig. You pull your coat tighter and stare at the moon as if it might remember your name. It doesn't. You lie down again on a sack of straw. Ember reclaims your spine like he owns the lease. And before sleep takes you, you whisper, "I didn't ruin the roof. I survived the stew. I might even be useful." And in a world where usefulness is currency, you've just earned your first real coin. You're jolted awake by someone yelling, "Fire!" Not a raging inferno, thankfully. Just a chimney flare-up and a baker with a flair for drama. But still, hearing fire before sunrise does something terrible to your soul. You bolt upright, whack your knee on a beam, and run barefoot outside. Your breath fogs in the cold. Your heart is staging a coup. The fire turns out to be smoke, bread, and an attention-seeking man with flour in his beard. You sit down in the mud and rethink your relationship with panic. Mira walks past you like none of this is new, carrying a basket of turnips like she's delivering royal news. No comment on your panic, your shoelessness, or your emotional spiral. "Fetch water," she says. You nod, like that's exactly what you're about to do. Ember follows you to the well, sniffing rocks with intense curiosity, like one might be lunch. Your arms ache, but you pull the bucket up anyway. The rope no longer blisters your palms, just tingles. Progress. Back at the barn, the boy proudly unveils his latest creation, a bird trap. It's twigs, string, and boundless optimism. "What'll you do when you catch one?" you ask. "Tell its secrets," he replies. Mira snorts. "Then eat it." You gently suggest that some birds aren't meant to be eaten. He considers this and weakens the trap slightly, mercy through bad design. A surprisingly effective strategy. Next, you clean the barn. Actually clean it. Shovel in hand, you encounter substances you can't name and smells your brain will try to forget for the rest of your natural life. The cow watches you the whole time, judgment heavy in her stare. You apologize. Mira gives you fresh straw and says, "Put it like it matters." You do, mostly out of fear. A stranger arrives that afternoon, tall, cloak draped like he has opinions. He speaks slowly, like each word costs money. He's selling tinctures, salves, and something labeled Root for Courage. Mira buys none of it, but the boy listens like the man's a wizard in disguise. You lean in too, despite yourself. He offers you a sample, a paste that smells like mint and secrets. You politely decline. Later, Mira buys dried mint and mutters, "That's courage." Lunch is thin barley soup, floating with mushrooms that may or may not be local. Mira claims to know where they came from. You believe her, not because you're convinced, but because hunger is more persuasive than doubt. The boy says it tastes like a warm forest. You think that's a compliment. Ember eats one and immediately regrets it. Mira swats him with a spoon. He sneezes, glares, and stalks off like a slighted duke. You spend the rest of the afternoon patching a fence that's less of a barrier and more of a polite suggestion. Tom joins you, chewing on something green and bitter. "Fences are lies," he says. "They only work if the animals believe in them." You nod, mostly because it sounds like philosophy and you're too tired to argue. It sort of does. At one point, you hammer your thumb and let out words you didn't know you remembered. Mira hears them. Doesn't correct you. Just mutters. Now you sound local. As the light fades, the baker, the morning fire yeller, drops off a loaf as thanks for helping with her chimney stone. It's dense, cracked, and smells amazing. Mira slices it like it's a peace treaty. The boy calls it castle bread. Ember tries to steal a piece and gets rebuffed with a firm boot. You eat yours slowly, savoring every chew. Mira pretends not to watch you eating the crust. She's pleased, which in her language means she doesn't scowl. The boy asks if people in the South, your vague and ever-flexible homeland, eat bread like this. You say, "Only on special days." Mira replies, "Then make today special." You laugh. She doesn't. She's serious. So you declare it bread day. The boy claps, Ember burps, Mira smirks, the fire cracks, and for a moment you almost forget that this isn't where you're from. After supper, you sit outside, picking straw from your sleeves, watching smoke rise into the dark like it's got somewhere to be. The stars blink slowly overhead, older than everything here, and still somehow surprised to see you. Ember settles beside you. You scratch his ear. He sighs like he's decided you're all right. That feels better than most compliments. You head in when the air begins to bite. Mira's already asleep. The boy's curled like a comma around Ember. You lie on your straw mat and stretch just enough to feel sore in 6 places. You think about how, back home, your calendar was full but your days were empty. Now you've done more before noon than you used to do in a week. You whisper to yourself, "I earned my crust today, and it tasted like something I could build a life out of." You wake before the sun, not by choice. Something's chirping near your ear with the persistence of a guilt-ridden conscience. You swat blindly, only to discover it's not a bird. It's the boy gently poking your temple with a stick. "Time to check the traps," he says, beaming like it's Christmas instead of another chill-soaked medieval morning. What time is it as you're watching this? Is it evening after a long day, or is it already late when the world has gone quiet? No matter the hour, I'm truly glad you're here, sharing this moment with me. Ember lifts his head, yawns, and goes right back to sleep. You envy his boundaries. You do not share them. You crawl out from under the blanket like a mollusk from its shell, bones creaking in protest. The fire's out again. Mira isn't in the house, which means she's already done 3 hours of work and will expect the same from you before breakfast. You grab your coat, jam your feet into boots that are now more concept than structure, and follow the boy outside. The air smells like wet grass and old stones, not unpleasant, just medieval. The traps are, generously speaking, hopeful. String snares, a basket propped on a stick, and something that looks like it was designed by a squirrel in therapy. You admire the effort. The boy inspects them like a general on campaign. One trap has caught a bird. The boy gasps in reverence. You hesitate. It's small, feathered, alive, looking at you like it knows you're the imposter here. The boy offers to wring its neck. You say, let's give it one more day. He nods, not understanding, but he lets you have this small mercy. Back at the hut, Mira is kneading dough with the kind of energy most people reserve for vengeance. You offer to help. She hands you a bowl of water and points to a pile of greens. You wash them poorly. She corrects you once, then never again. That's how you know you failed with distinction. The boy brings the bird in and releases it in the corner. Mira says nothing, but later she adds an extra slice of root to your bowl. That's her version of soft. Breakfast is bread and greens, warm and dense, served in silence. Mira's clearly thinking, probably about how to make the ceiling stop dripping. The boy talks about building a windmill. You nod, like that's a perfectly reasonable idea. Ember sneezes under the table. Mira curses softly, something about fleas and cursed straw. You itch your leg reflexively. It's already too late. After breakfast, you're sent to the stream to wash clothes. It's not a suggestion. Mira points to the bundle and waves you out the door like she's releasing an underqualified bird into the wild. The stream is cold enough to make your fingers consider mutiny. You scrub awkwardly while two older women watch you with the kind of amusement usually reserved for drunk dancing. You nod politely. They nod back. One offers a tip about soap root. The other hands you dried fish. You accept both with equal gratitude and confusion. You dry the clothes by draping them over a hedge that might be sacred, or might not, depending on who you ask. An old man passing by scowls and mutters a prayer under his breath. Another just farts and keeps walking. You take that as a blessing. When the clothes are mostly dry and entirely wrinkled, you fold them like you're pretending your life is orderly. Later, Mira refolds every item without a word, which somehow feels worse than being scolded. Lunch is cold porridge and warm cider, shared beneath a tree that's pretending to have leaves. Mira doesn't say much, but quietly slides the last spoonful of honey aside when the boy isn't looking. You don't say thank you. You just eat it with reverence, carrying the posture of someone who knows better than to make a fuss over rare kindness. Ember lies across your foot, the warmest thing you've had all day. That afternoon, you're sent to deliver a message to a man named Corvin in the next village. Mira hands you a strip of leather with a symbol etched into it. Don't lose it, she says. What does it mean? It means I vouch for you, she replies, then adds, not forever. You walk the winding road, trying not to overthink how much it feels like you're carrying your own passport, made of hope and obligation. The next village is only a mile off, but it feels like a century. The road dips, then rises, then suddenly twists through trees, whispering things you can't quite catch. You pass a woman carrying firewood on her back. She doesn't look at you. You pass a man leading a cow that looks smarter than its owner. You arrive with sore feet and no idea what comes next. Corvin waits by a gate, arms crossed, his beard a tangled bird's nest. Mira? He grunts. You nod. He grunts again. Approval. You've passed. You return with a bag of flour, a folded note, and a piece of cheese older than you are. Mira opens the bag, reads the note, and nods once. You didn't die, she says. That's good. Then she goes back to peeling something unidentifiable. The boy asks if the other village has dragons. You say, no, but maybe a wizard. He's delighted. Ember barks and then throws up a feather. You decide not to ask. That night, you lie by the fire, arms behind your head, full in that particular way that comes from surviving, contributing, and eating something you didn't have to steal. You watch Mira tuck the boy in, muttering something that might be a prayer. Ember circles twice and flops across your legs. As sleep tiptoes in like it doesn't want to be caught, you smile faintly and whisper, if I had a postcard, I'd write, still alive, wish you were here. You accept it like it's sacred, telling him it's the finest craftsmanship you've seen all day. He beams. Mira snorts into her cup. Ember wanders in, shakes mud all over the floor, and then has the audacity to look proud. Lunch is root stew with too much pepper and not nearly enough optimism. You eat it anyway. The boy talks about wanting to build a boat. Mira mutters, "First, learn to float." You suggest maybe you could carve something too, if someone lends you a knife and doesn't mind replacing it when you ruin it. Mira almost smiles. You ruin it. You sleep in the coop and nod solemnly. That feels fair. After the meal, you help sort beans. Not metaphorically, actual beans. Each one inspected like it's holding a grudge. You, Mira, and the boy sit in a triangle around a low table, fingers moving, eyes scanning. It's meditative in a fragile sort of way. You start to relax. That's when the pot spills. 50 beans scatter across the floor like they're trying to escape medieval capitalism. Ember pounces, slips, and knocks over the rest. Mira says a word. You didn't know she knew it. You say it too. You feel closer. The rain intensifies. The roof drips. The boy sets up bowls to catch the leaks and names them like pets. One is Drip, one is Drip's brother, and one is King Water. Mira stirs the fire and mutters that King Water can pay rent or leave. You add a log just to stay useful. The warmth fills the hut unevenly, but it's better than nothing. You wrap yourself in a blanket that smells like last week in dirt. Mostly comforting. The stranger comes again, this time with fabrics. Bright ones, silks may be stolen or traded. Hard to say. He lets the boy touch them, but glares when you reach out. Mira buys nothing. She says silk is for weddings and burials, and she has no plans for either. You notice she lingers on a dark red piece longer than the rest, but don't mention it. Some softness is private. As night approaches, you're told to help move the chickens. No explanation, just an order. You learn quickly that chickens don't negotiate, they don't listen, and they don't forget. By the time you're done, you've been pecked twice and insulted in several dialects of cluck. Mira hands you a rag for the blood. The boy gives you a feather. You earned it, he says. You tuck it behind your ear. Why not? Dinner is stale bread dipped in warm broth. No one complains. You all sit by the fire, each lost in your own weather. Mira mends something. The boy sketches with charcoal on wood. Ember chases a fly and loses. You sip your broth and stare at the drip from the ceiling, now falling directly into King Water. You feel weirdly proud of the naming system. You helped build that empire. Later, in the dark, with your feet tucked under Ember and your head on a sack of millet, you whisper to yourself, "I did nothing spectacular today." And yet, you're full of food, warmth, and something that might be belonging. As the rain presses on the roof like it's trying to hear your dreams, you smile and think, some days, surviving is the story. You wake to quiet, not silence. That doesn't exist here. But a rural truce between the chickens, the wind, and whoever usually screams at dawn. It's unsettling. Mira isn't moving. Ember isn't snoring. The boy is still bundled like a tiny king, one foot sticking out from under his blanket like a declaration of peace. You sit up and stretch slowly as if the day might not notice you're awake. Your back cracks in 3 distinct places. That's your body applauding the effort. Mira eventually appears, hair tied back, with a look that says sleep is optional and you chose poorly. She hands you a small bucket and says, "River." You nod. She means laundry, or drinking water, or punishment. You don't ask. She's already halfway out the door by the time you grab your boots. Ember stirs and yawns like this is a massive inconvenience to his schedule. You resist the urge to explain how unfair that is. The path to the river is slick with mud and something that might be ash or might be history. You step carefully, gripping the bucket like it's full even when it's not. On the way, you pass the neighbor's goats standing in the road like they own it. They don't move. You detour. The goats watch you like they're taking notes for some future tribunal. At the river, the water runs fast and cold, cutting through the land like it doesn't care who's listening. You fill the bucket and try not to fall in. Mostly succeed. Back at the hut, Mira is gutting a fish with the same precision she uses to judge you. The boy is telling Ember a story about a talking frog and a queen who sneezes gold. You watch for a minute, wondering when that kind of imagination stopped visiting your mornings. Mira catches your gaze and tosses you a cloth. Clean the fish. Don't ruin it. You ruin only part of it. Progress. Breakfast is fish stew with greens and some kind of root that crunches like guilt. You eat it slowly. The boy devours his quickly. Ember tries to eat everyone's. Mira blocks him with a ladle and a look. You offer to do the dishes. She lets you, and you wash them in the cold basin outside. You realize your fingers no longer go numb after 2 minutes. Now they wait until 5. You hum a victory tune, and the chickens stare like you're performing sacrilege. A merchant passes through around midday, cart, donkey, and a collection of jars that may or may not contain preserved food or body parts. Mira trades a pair of eggs and half a spool of thread for something wrapped in waxed cloth. You don't ask. Later, she unwraps it, and you see dried peaches. She gives one to the boy, one to you, and none to herself. You break yours in half and give it back without a word. She doesn't refuse. That's how you know it mattered. You spend the afternoon mending the roof again. Mira insists it's not leaking, but you hear the lie in her voice and feel the drip in your sleep. She hands you a bundle of reeds and a knife that's seen better centuries. You climb up and pretend to know what you're doing. The view from the top is all sky and smudgy gray rooftops, people the size of regrets moving below. For a second, it feels like you're above the past. Then, the wind shifts, and the smell of manure reminds you where you are. Back on solid ground, the boy asks if you've ever ridden a horse. You tell him, honestly, no. He says, you should learn in case we get famous. Mira says nothing, but her smirk suggests she already doubts your hero arc. You ask the boy if Ember counts as a horse. He nods solemnly. Ember farts. You take that as a yes. Dinner is a kind of mash that defies description. Mira says it's made of everything else. The boy calls it ghost food. You chew it like it might bite back. It doesn't. Ember sniffs it and walks away. Mira finishes her bowl without flinching. You follow her lead. Afterward, the boy finds a mouse in the grain sack and names it Dennis. Mira says Dennis has until sunrise. As the fire crackles and Ember curls around Mira's feet, the boy draws something in ash, a tall figure with arms too long and feet too big. You ask who it is. He says it's you. Mira says, needs more mud. The boy adds a streak across the figure's face. You smile. You feel placed. Not welcomed, not celebrated, but included. Like a tool that hasn't broken yet. You lie down that night under a roof you patched near a boy who trusts you and a woman who, against her better judgment, hasn't thrown you out. The stars outside flicker through gaps in the beams, tiny sparks above a world still held together with twine, spit, and stubbornness. As your eyes close, you think, I may not belong, but I've stopped asking where else I should be. You wake to fog, not a poetic, rolling mist kind of fog. This is the kind that sits in your mouth and ears and shirt collar, like the air got tired of staying outside and decided to be personal. Mira is already up, boiling water and muttering at the stove like it owes her rent. The boy is still asleep, curled in a bundle so tight he looks like laundry that gave up. Ember's nose twitches in his dreams, chasing something that probably deserves it. You sit up, exhale, and feel the fog move. It's going to be one of those days. You help gather kindling, which mostly means finding damp twigs and trying not to call them what they are. Lies. Every stick looks fine until it snaps like disappointment. Mira tosses yours aside without comment and replaces them with a stack she found in half the time. You pretend not to notice. You've learned to lose with grace. Ember follows you, tail swishing, nose to the dirt, occasionally barking at invisible threats. You're starting to suspect he knows more than anyone else here. Breakfast is porridge again. Mira adds dried herbs. The boy calls it swamp stew and eats it with enthusiasm that doesn't match the flavor. You chew carefully, pretending it tastes like something you once had at a tourist cafe that charged extra for authenticity. Mira eats fast. She's got plans. You just don't know what they are yet. She hands you a bucket and a sickle and says, "Field." You nod like that makes sense. It doesn't. You go anyway. The field stretches wide, damp and stubborn, with grass that refuses to cooperate. You cut clumsily. Mira works beside you with the precision of someone who's been battling plants her whole life. The boy collects bundles and arranges them like trophies. You try not to compare your pile to Mira's. You fail. Around midday, the wind picks up and the fog lifts just enough to remind you that the sun is still under contract. You pause to drink from the stream and nearly fall in again. Mira laughs. Not a full laugh, just a breathy, surprised exhale. But it's enough. The boy slips once too. You catch his arm. "You're strong now," he says. "Just lucky," you reply. "Same thing," Mira says. You dry your sleeves on the grass and pretend you're not freezing. The boy offers you half a plum, sour, small, and maybe stolen. You eat it like it's dessert. Back at the hut, you help repair the door latch, which has been loose for days. Mira finally trusts you with the knife. That feels like something. You carve a new peg clumsily, fit it into place, and test the swing. It sticks slightly. You grin anyway. Mira grunts approval. The boy names it Sir Clutchington. You salute. Ember sneezes at it. Ceremony complete. You spend the afternoon helping Tom slaughter a chicken. You were not emotionally prepared for this. You try to stay useful, holding bowls, fetching water, not fainting. Mira joins halfway through and takes over without blinking. The chicken dies quickly and efficiently. You feel weird about it, then worse about feeling weird, then quietly grateful for every anonymous meal you've ever eaten. The boy isn't allowed to watch. He peeks anyway. Tom pays you in potatoes. Real ones. Mira pockets some before you get any ideas. You joke about opening a shop. "You'd starve," she says. You agree. But you line the potatoes up on the shelf like trophies. The boy arranges them into a family. Ember tries to eat the smallest one. Mira smacks him with a spoon. Balance is restored. Dinner is stew, obviously, with potato this time. The boy cheers. Mira eats in silence, but her eyes are softer than usual. You take the last spoonful with reverence. You're full in a way that has nothing to do with food. The room smells like earth, smoke, and something else. Earned comfort. Ember licks the bowl. Mira lets him. You don't mention it. Later, you sit outside. The fog's gone. The stars are back. You recognize none of them but name one anyway. Call it Almost Home. The boy joins you, blanket over his head, whispering nonsense about dream maps and sky doors. You listen. Believe him a little. Mira leans in the doorway, arms folded, watching both of you like she's measuring something. You meet her gaze. She doesn't look away. As the night thickens and the air finally remembers how to be still, you stretch your legs, tilt your head back, and whisper, "I didn't know it could feel like this, and maybe I don't need to. For now, if stories like this, slow, gentle, and quietly thought-provoking, help you feel just a little more at ease, then maybe consider subscribing. There are many more stories waiting for you, and I'd love to tell them to you one night at a time. If stories like this, slow, gentle, and quietly thought-provoking, help you feel just a little more at ease, then maybe consider subscribing. There are many more stories waiting for you, and I would love to tell them to you. You don't know what they're fighting about, but you're definitely losing the argument. One honks directly at the barn wall like it's personally offended by the architecture. Mirror is already up, probably solving 3 problems before you can name one. The boy is gone too, probably with Ember, likely causing small and sincere mischief. You sit up slowly, every joint complaining in its own language. Welcome to another medieval morning where your alarm clock hisses and bites. The fire is low but still alive. You poke at it with a stick, pretending you know what you're doing. Mira walks in mid-poke, takes the stick and fixes it without breaking eye contact. You nod like you've contributed to the very concept of fire. She tosses you a small piece of bread and says, "Mark it today." You chew the bread like it's not made from pebbles and intention. Then you nod again. Mark it. Sounds like a field trip. You grab your coat and your last surviving sock. The road is muddy, full of tracks and smells you don't want to analyze. You walk behind Mira and the boy, carrying trade goods, a bundle of dried herbs, a stitched cloth, and something in a jar you suspect used to be alive. Mira says very little. The boy says everything. Ember walks beside you like your furry legal guardian, tail twitching with judgment. The village market is a mile away, but it feels like crossing into a different world. The market smells like onions, sweat, smoke, and hope. Loud voices hawk goods you can't quite identify. Everyone has something to sell, and no time for your confusion. You follow Mira like a duckling who speaks the wrong dialect. She haggles with a woman selling root vegetables, gestures at your jacket like it's part of the deal, and somehow walks away with a wheel of cheese and an apple. You have no idea how. You hold the apple reverently. Left alone at one stall, Mira disappears to check prices, which is code for do something important without the dead weight. You stand awkwardly between a man selling goat milk and a girl aggressively offering socks. The boy is already eating something. Mira definitely wouldn't approve. Ember's gone. You hope he's not eating anyone's lunch. You trade your shoelace, yes, your actual shoelace, for a piece of smoked fish. You're both ashamed and proud. Mira finds you chewing beside the well. She doesn't ask what you traded. She sees the fish and raises an eyebrow. Expensive shoelace, you say. Limited edition. She shakes her head but doesn't confiscate it. You call that progress. The boy asks for a bite. You give him the last one. He declares you a hero of snacks. Mira rolls her eyes and hands you a bundle. Carry this, hero. The way back is quieter. The boy is sleepy, mirror-focused, and you're trying not to drop whatever mystery is wrapped in the cloth on your shoulder. Ember reappears from nowhere, wet, muddy, and extremely proud of himself. Mira mutters something about bathing him in vinegar. You choose not to ask. You walk slower than usual, partly to stay upright, partly to make the walk last. You've started to like the space between places. Back home, Mira unpacks the bundle, herbs, beans, something she won't name, then starts sorting with the precision of someone who wastes nothing, not even small things. You offer to help. She doesn't answer, just pushes a bowl your way. You take it because that's the answer. The boy disappears to invent soup. You're unsure if that's culinary or philosophical. Ember sleeps on your foot like it's his job. Dinner is the apple split 3 ways and a soup that tastes mostly like boiling. The boy insists he helped. Mira doesn't correct him. You eat slowly, not because it's delicious, though it's not bad, but because it feels wrong to rush a meal made from effort. The fire burns hotter tonight. Maybe the market firewood was blessed. Maybe Mira finally taught it respect. Afterward, you help clean. Mira says little. You say less. The boy curls in the corner with Ember, drawing something in the dust. Mira watches them with a look that's half love, half exhaustion. You ask if the market was good. She says, "We still have what matters." You don't know if she means the apple, the soup, or the boy. Maybe all of it. You step outside before bed. The sky is clear, cold, sharp. Stars spread like promises you can't name. You lean against the doorframe, pull your coat tight, and listen to the nothing between sounds that only exists in places this old. As you exhale steam and hear Mira moving behind you and the boy's soft sleep sounds, you think, I used to think peace would feel louder. But maybe peace just feels like staying. You wake to the sound of Mira sharpening a blade. It's not menacing, just matter of fact, rhythmic. The kind of sound that says the day is already moving and you've been left behind. You sit up slowly, pulling straw from your hair and something suspiciously crunchy from your sleeve. Ember is chewing on what looks like half of your sock. You let him. He's earned it. The boy is already outside, yelling at the sun to get up faster. You envy that kind of confidence. Mira hands you a list, not a written one, just a verbal assault of tasks delivered with her usual clarity. Fix the fence, collect eggs, check the snare. Don't be useless. You nod through it like you're being Ned. She hands you bread with one hand and a hammer with the other. You eat fast. The bread is better today, not less stale, just less surprised to still be bread. You pat Ember on the head. He burps ominously. You take that as encouragement. The fence is a disaster. One side leans like it's made of tired knees. You try propping it with a stick, then a rock, then pure willpower. None of it works. You finally lash the worst bit to a tree stump and pray the goats don't notice. One of them watches you the entire time, chewing grass slowly with judgment. You salute it anyway. It doesn't salute back. That's fine. Goats are famously proud. You check the snares and find nothing, not even a feather. A strange mix of relief and disappointment settles in. You leave a small piece of bread in one snare, not as bait, more like an apology. Back at the coop, you discover the hens have staged a coup. They refuse to leave their perch and peck at you like you owe them something. Mira eventually appears, snatches 2 eggs from beneath them with one hand, and walks off like she just performed a miracle. You consider applauding. The boy wants to build a catapult. You ask what for. Just in case, he says. You nod because that's a flawless reason. He finds 2 planks and a springy branch. You help him tie it together with a strip of cloth from your ruined sock. Ember tests it by sitting on it. The boy launches a turnip 6 feet. You both cheer. Mira sighs, but later you notice she moved a contraption under the eaves out of the rain. Lunch is surprisingly decent. Root mash with bits of salted meat Mira refuses to discuss. The boy calls it warrior food. You agree? Mira rolls her eyes but gives you an extra scoop. Ember gets a lick of the pot and does so like it insulted his ancestors. The fire burns hotter than usual, and for a moment you actually feel warm. Not just in your coat, but somewhere beneath it. That afternoon, you and Mira carry wood from the edge of the forest. It's a quiet walk, not uncomfortable, just full of the kind of silence that holds shape. She doesn't ask questions. You don't offer answers. But when you stumble on a rock and drop your bundle, she stops and helps you restack it. No words, just hands working together. That feels bigger than any conversation. Back home, the boy has added wheels to the catapult. It now moves poorly. Ember is terrified of it and hides under the bench. Mira pretends not to be impressed. You patch your sock with a needle that bends and thread that frays. The sock ends up worse than when you started. Mira watches you finish, takes it gently, and mends it again without a word. You think about saying thank you. You don't. You just put it back on. Dinner is stew again, this time with a handful of something green and mysterious. Mira calls it not poison. The boy adds more salt than should be legal. Ember watches the bowl like a hawk with manners. You eat slowly. The warmth pools in your belly like someone telling you did all right today. Mira eats in silence. The boy talks until he falls asleep on the mat, 1 foot still in the bowl. You carefully remove it. That's parenting now, apparently. Later, Mira asks if you miss your place. You say sometimes. She nods. Must have been easier. You don't answer, not because she's wrong, but because you're not sure she's right either. The ease of something doesn't mean it filled you. It just means it didn't fight back here. Everything fights back. But at least you know you're alive. As the fire burns low, Ember sighs into his sleep. You lie down with a patched sock, a full belly, and a faint bruise from a catapult test gone wrong, and you think, this is the longest I've stayed anywhere and wanted to wake up again. Somehow, that feels like the most honest thing you've thought in years. You wake to cold air and the distinct smell of onions frying in old fat. Your stomach growls before you even open your eyes. Ember is already awake, staring at you with the focused intensity of a creature who knows breakfast is imminent and considers you a delivery mechanism. The boy is humming again, something off-key and joyful. Mira's voice cuts through the room. If you want some, move. You move fast. Cold floors be damned. Breakfast is a kind of onion cake, flat, oily, and slightly burnt. You eat it like it's treasure. The boy devours his and asks for more. Mira says, learn to cook. He sighs dramatically and announces he'll become a chef warrior. You tell him that sounds terrifying. Ember gets the crusts. Mira hands you a half-full bucket and says, stream. You nod. Your version of morning coffee is now carrying heavy water uphill. Your spine disapproves loudly. At the stream, you pause a little longer than you need to. The waters are clear today, glittering like they're trying to apologize for being freezing. You splash your face and listen to the birds arguing in the trees. For a moment, the world feels soft. No cars, no buzzing phones, no rush. Just you, your breath, and a squirrel with boundary issues watching from a branch. You carry the water back like it's more than just water. Maybe it is. Mira is sorting beans when you arrive. The good ones go into a jar, the bad ones to the chickens. You sit beside her and start sorting slowly, carefully, like every bean is a choice. The boy walks past, wielding a stick he insists is a sword, and challenges Ember to a duel. Ember growls, then rolls over. Victory by surrender. Mira smiles just a little. You pretend not to notice. Smiling here is like currency, used sparingly. Later, you help repair a sagging section of the thatched roof. Mira climbs the ladder like it owes her money. You hand her reeds, tools, bits of twine. She doesn't say much, but she doesn't correct you either. That's a win. The sky is heavy with clouds but holds back the rain. You keep checking it anyway. Old habits die hard. Mira finally says it won't rain yet. How do you know? You ask. She says it's waiting for something. You believe her without understanding. Lunch is flatbread with mashed root and something that might be pickled turnip. You eat it gratefully, and you are grateful. The boy eats with his mouth open and tells you that if you ever leave, he'll name the catapult after you. That's an honor, you say. Mira smirks. Might be the first thing you've built that actually works. You raise your cup in a mock salute. Ember tries to drink from it. Mira swats him away. Everyone's roles are secure. The neighbor drops by asking for help digging out a blocked drainage ditch. You go, not because it's your job, but because somehow now it is. The ditch is half water, half sludge, and all resistance. You and Tom dig in silence, broken only by occasional curses or the croak of frogs. You've got a good back for labor, he says. You tell him you had a desk once. He laughs like that's the most absurd confession he's ever heard. By the time you return, your hands are stained and your shoulders ache in ways that feel earned. Mira nods when she sees you and hands you a bowl of broth without asking. The boy says Ember tried to steal a turnip and failed. He's fast, but not clever, he says. Mira mutters like most men do. You raise your eyebrows. She doesn't deny it. Fair enough. Dinner is quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't demand filling, just warmth. Mira eats slowly. The boy falls asleep with a spoon in his hand. Ember snores. You watch the fire and wonder how much of this is real, not just the place, but you in it. You're starting to blend in, starting to forget your other life, the one without goats or buckets or days that felt this full. Later, lying back, you trace knots in the rafters with your eyes. Mira's still awake, mending something she doesn't need to explain. The fire crackles. The wind whispers at the shutters but doesn't find its way in. You shift under the blanket and whisper mostly to yourself, I didn't come here to belong, but maybe I stayed because I do. You wake to birdsong, not the delicate kind that makes poets cry. This is aggressive, full-throated early morning opera from a creature 2 ounces heavy carrying the wrath of a tax collector. You throw a stick at the rafters. It misses. The bird wins. Ember lifts his head, sighs, and resumes being furniture. The boy is already outside yelling something about skyworms while carrying a bucket that's definitely too heavy. You stretch slowly. The floor is cold, your joints colder. Mira stokes the fire like it insulted her mother. She points at the bench. You sit. She hands you a chunk of bread and a strip of dried meat so tough it could legally be used as armor. You chew it anyway. Breakfast, like most things here, is more about perseverance than pleasure. The boy bursts in, holding a worm the size of your finger. For fishing, he says proudly. Mira tells him to wash his hands. He doesn't. You pretend not to notice. You're sent to the woods today. The trees loom in that way only old forests do. Tall, quiet, and slightly judging. You're with Tom, who speaks like he was born tired and only recently discovered sarcasm. You gather fallen branches, some mushrooms that Mira trust, and some that don't, and a sack of moss for reasons never clarified. You slip once and fall into a bush that smells like regret. Tom helps you up and says, now you're baptized. You thank him. He's not wrong. On the way back, you find a rusted horseshoe. You hold it up like treasure. Tom shrugs. Luxury overrated. Still, you bring it back. The boy is delighted. Ember tries to chew it. Mira hangs it on a nail near the door. No comment. That's how you know it mattered. You sit on the step, brushing mud off your sleeves, watching the sky pretend it doesn't know what rain is. Mira tosses you a cloth. You smell like tree. You take that as a compliment. Lunch is soup again, but this time there's actual flavor, wild garlic maybe, and something Mira won't name. You eat 2 bowls. The boy claims his third made him stronger. He lifts a log to prove it. It's mostly bark. You clap anyway. Mira watches this circus with narrowed eyes and soft edges. Ember steals a crust and is forgiven immediately. You wonder if that's loyalty or a well-timed survival instinct. The afternoon drags on in a good way. Mira mends the basket. You whittle a spoon. That's more philosophical concept than utensil. The boy builds a fort out of firewood and declarations. Ember naps, belly up, snoring like a distant storm. You watch dust float in the sunbeams and realize you haven't thought about electricity in 2 days. No Wi-Fi, no schedules, just wood, warmth, and whether Mira will let you have a second helping tonight. Later, you're told to help with laundry. This is less romantic than the stream scenes in old movies. It's cold and wet. Your knuckles go numb after 5 minutes. Mira works beside you like her fingers were born for water. You try to match her rhythm. You fail. She doesn't correct you. She just switches buckets and leaves you to suffer with dignity. That feels worse somehow. You mutter to the soap root. It offers no sympathy. As the clothes dry on the line, the boy brings you a crown of weeds for laundry night. You wear it, he says, because what else can you do? Ember barks at a squirrel and nearly takes out the drying shirts. Mira saves the midfall, swears softly, and hands you a stick. You wield it like a hero whose kingdom is made of damp socks. Dinner is thin stew and thick bread. Mira adds herbs. The boy adds questions. You add silence, letting the warmth do the talking. Ember gets a bowl of scraps and looks deeply satisfied. Mira watches the pot boil down and says, "We'll need more by week's end." You offer to trade. She shrugs. "We'll see if they still like your buttons." You nod, already checking your coat sleeves for valuables. After dinner, you and the boy build a watch post from crates and hay. Mira doesn't stop you. Ember joins the guard rotation and immediately falls asleep. You sit up there with the boy as the stars blink awake one by one. He points out the crooked one and says, "That's where the gods live." You nod, because why not? He leans against your shoulder. It's the first time he's done that without asking. Later, you lie down with straw in your shirt and wood dust under your fingernails. Mira is quiet. The boy mumbles something about skyworms again. Ember twitches in his sleep. You listen to the house breathe around you and whisper to the dark, "If I vanish tomorrow, would they notice?" Then you answer yourself, "They would." Probably not with tears, but with chores suddenly needing doing. You wake to the sound of Mira arguing with a goose. It's not clear who. I wonder how awake you still are. Maybe your eyes are starting to slow, your heart is beating a little softer, your thoughts drifting away from the present. If you've started to yawn just a bit, then maybe I'm doing what I came here to do. The boy is already outside with a stick, not helping, just narrating. "Mother of feathers strikes again," he says, ducking as the goose flaps past in a fury. You roll over and briefly consider staying horizontal forever. Ember is curled at your feet, warm and entirely indifferent to the poultry politics unfolding beyond the door. You envy his priorities. You eventually drag yourself upright and limp toward the door like an old knight going to war without armor. Mira waves a broom, the goose hisses, the boy throws crumbs and yells, "Diplomacy!" The chaos ends with Mira tossing a bucket of water and declaring victory. You stand there holding a piece of dry bread, entirely unsure how to re-enter this world. Mira glares at the goose and mutters something about stew. You eat the bread silently. Today's job is fetching stones, not exciting ones, not valuable ones, just round, flat, heavy rocks from the riverbed to reinforce the garden wall. Mira hands you a sack and says, "Bring back what doesn't argue." The boy offers to come but gets distracted by a lizard. Ember trots behind you like he's planning to supervise. The walk to the river is quiet, not empty, just full of things left unsaid. At the river, you pick through rocks while Ember attempts to catch imaginary fish. You find 7 that seem acceptable and 3 that might just be old potatoes. You pause to rest on a boulder, letting the sound of the current drown out your thoughts. The world here moves slower, but not without force. Everything's happening all the time, just beneath the surface. You sit with that for a while. Then Ember barks at a stick and ruins the moment. You thank him. Back in the village, Mira inspects the rocks like a merchant checking coins. She grunts. That means they'll do. The boy asks if one can be his pet. Mira says only if he feeds it. The boy accepts the terms. You start setting the rocks into the base of the wall. It's awkward, slow work. Mira eventually takes over, muttering something about angles. You step aside and watch her hands move like they've done this in another life. Maybe they have. Lunch is lentils and dried carrot boiled into a paste you could use to fix the roof. You eat all of it. The boy mixes his with leftover cheese and declares it a new invention. Mira refuses to acknowledge this. Ember licks the bowl when no one's watching. You hand him the spoon. It's become your quiet deal. He guards you from the chickens. You sneak him flavor. In the afternoon, you patch a hole in the grain sack using instructions shouted by Mira from across the room. The boy offers suggestions. None are helpful. The needle slips 3 times. Your finger bleeds once. Mira finally takes the sack, mends it in 4 silent minutes, and hands it back without comment. You say, "I was getting there." She says, "Yes, in winter." Ember sneezes. You consider that a shared opinion. Someone's cart breaks near the edge of the village. Tom ropes you into helping. The axles crack, the wheel bent. You hold it in place while he hammers, cursing rhythmically. You learn new words. You promise not to use them around the boy. Tom says nothing, just hands you the hammer when his arms get tired. For a moment, it feels like trust, or maybe just sore shoulders. Either way, you don't drop it. Back home, Mira is making tea from leaves that smell like sleep. The boy is drawing maps on a scrap of bark, plotting the borders of his imaginary kingdom. You ask if you can live there. He says, "Only if you build bridges." Mira says he's not wrong. You sip your tea. It tastes like someone whispered comfort into hot water. You tell Mira, she ignores you but refills your cup. Dinner is thin but warm. The boy tries to tell a story and falls asleep halfway through a sentence. Ember leans against your leg like an old soldier at rest. Mira clears the bowls, humming something you almost recognize. You offer to help. She says you've done enough, but hands you a towel anyway. It's her way of saying you're not useless anymore. Later, you sit on the step outside, watching the moon climb through the branches. There are fewer stars tonight, but the ones that remain seem brighter, like they're trying harder on your behalf. You pull your coat tighter, listen to the soft shuffle of Mira tidying behind you and the boy's gentle sleep breaths like waves on a tiny shore. And you whisper, without meaning to, "I don't miss where I came from tonight." The silence agrees. You wake to birds fighting on the roof. Judging by the volume, they're arguing over property rights, and one of them is definitely losing. Mira is already dressed, feeding the fire and ignoring the aerial warfare above her. The boy is wrapped in his blanket like a cocoon, murmuring about swordfish and cabbage. Probably a dream, hopefully not a plan. Ember opens one eye, sneezes, and goes back to sleep like he knows something you don't. You get up and crack your neck. That's the extent of your morning luxury. Mira hands you a basket and says one word. Here, herbs. You nod, despite not knowing which ones or where they are, or if she's even in the mood to tolerate questions. She points vaguely toward the hills and adds, "You'll know them when you smell them." You won't, but you set off anyway, because here, ignorance is no excuse for staying still. The boy tries to follow. Mira stops him with a look. You almost say thank you. The hills are quieter than the village, in the way a held breath is quieter than a sigh. You walk past fields lined with rocks and scarecrows that don't scare anything. Birds sit on their arms like critics. The path curves into trees, and the light turns green and soft, like someone dimmed the world a little on purpose. You stop for a moment just to breathe. It smells like dirt and damp bark and possibility. You pretend you're a local. No one's around to call your bluff. Eventually, you find herbs, or at least plants that look close enough. You pick the ones that smell like citrus and the ones that smell like regret. You hope Mira's in the mood for surprise. Along the way, you stumble across a patch of wild strawberries. You eat 2, pocket 3, and leave the rest like a prayer. The woods aren't quiet anymore. You hear birds, distant dogs, and the hum of bees who couldn't care less about you. You take the long way home. Back at the house, Mira inspects the basket with the expression of someone judging a contest she didn't enter. She pulls out a handful, sniffs them, and grunts. Then she says, "Not deadly, probably." You take that as praise. She adds a few of your finds to the pot, drops in a bone from yesterday, and mutters something about flavor. The boy demands a taste test. Mira hands him a spoon. He makes a face. You don't ask for a turn. You spend the afternoon scraping bark from firewood, somehow both boring and painful. Mira sharpens knives nearby. The sound is rhythmic and just slightly threatening. The boy is building a fortress out of hay and ambition. Ember guards it fiercely until Mira throws a turnip at him. You watch it all while your hands blister and your back tenses. You try humming. It helps a little. Later, you're asked to help in the garden. Mira hands you a hoe and a very specific set of instructions involving spacing, depth, and respect. You get 2 of those right. She corrects you without scolding, which is far worse. The boy plants something for the future. Mira snorts. "The future better grow fast," she says. You feel that in your chest more than you should. Lunch is stew again, now with mystery herbs. It's better than usual. Mira doesn't mention it, but you catch her going back for seconds. The boy declares it magical. Ember tries to eat directly from the pot and gets a broom to the backside. You chew slowly, letting the flavor do the talking. No one says it out loud, but it's the first meal in a while that tastes deliberate. After lunch, you help the neighbor dig post holes. It's hard, dirty work. You sweat through your shirt and smash your thumb twice. The neighbor says, "You're not built for this." You say, "Neither was the post." He laughs, and for a moment, you feel like you've been accepted by the village. Not officially, but enough that your blisters now qualify as a dialect. Back home, the boy has fallen asleep in the garden. Mira drapes a cloth over him and sits beside him with a bowl of shelling peas. You offer to take over. She nods. You sit in the dirt, shelling in silence, the sun setting slow behind you. Ember lies between you both, breathing like a metronome. You don't say anything profound, you just keep working, and that feels like enough. Dinner is simpler, just bread, dried fruit, and boiled roots. The boy wakes halfway through to ask if he missed dessert. Mira hands him a carrot. He accepts it like it's cake. You sip water warmed by the fire and feel something settle in your ribs, not pride, not satisfaction, just stillness. You're not used to it. It's nice. That night, as the fire flickers and Mira sets down her mending with a sigh you recognize as almost content, you stretch out on your mat and whisper, "I'm tired, but not empty. That has to count for something." The room, with its creaks and quiet breathing, agrees. You wake to Ember's tail slapping your face. It's a gentle betrayal, rhythmic, unbothered, and entirely unnecessary. He's dreaming, you think, about running or stealing bread or leading an army of chickens. You shove him gently. He snorts, repositions himself on your ankle, and declares the matter resolved. The boy is already up, barefoot outside, shouting at a tree for not blooming fast enough. Mira is grinding something with a mortar and pestle that sounds like it wants to escape. You roll over and brace for another day in paradise. Mira's tea today tastes like wet bark and someone's strong opinion about honesty. You drink it anyway. She says, "You'll help me at the mill." You nod, not because you understand what that entails, but because it's safer than asking. The boy volunteers too, but Mira says she needs someone to keep Ember from digging another tunnel under the fence. The boy accepts his mission with the seriousness of a monk. Ember looks unconvinced. The walk to the mill is longer than expected and louder than hoped. Mira doesn't talk much, but her steps say plenty. This is a place with rules, expectations, and people who measure things you didn't know could be measured. The air smells of flour, river water, and sweat. The mill creaks like it's constantly questioning its own purpose. You carry a sack of grain inside and are immediately hit by a wave of heat and dust that tries to claim a place in your lungs. The miller is a tall, silent man who nods once and hands you a shovel, no explanation. You follow Mira's lead, scooping, sorting, bagging, hauling. It's endless, circular work, like arguing with someone you love. Mira works faster than you. She always does. At one point, you ask if she ever gets tired. "Only when I think," she says. You consider asking what she thinks about, but don't. The silence is already saying enough. At midday, you break for bread and cheese that crumbles like it's holding a grudge. You eat quickly, leaning against a warm stone, listening to the river turn the wheel. The wheel grinds the grain. The grain becomes something useful. Mira drinks water from a shared flask and hands it to you without looking. The moment feels like a handshake, a truce, or maybe just routine. It still matters. Back at the hut, the boy has built a fortress of mud and sticks. Ember is inside it. Trapped by loyalty or confusion, the boy declares it a palace for their future army. Mira surveys the yard, the mud on the walls, the missing wash bucket. "Wonderful," she says flatly. The boy beams. You help clean up, which mostly means redistributing the mud in slightly less artistic patterns. Ember escapes, victorious but filthy. Later, Mira sends you to the neighbors with a bundle of cloth. You deliver it, exchange a few polite nods, and are gifted 3 eggs in return. One breaks on the way back because you trip over a stump that wasn't there yesterday. Mira takes the remaining 2 without a word. You boil them for dinner. The boy gets one. Mira splits the other. You pretend you weren't hoping for a full one. Ember gets the shell. The evening is cool, quieter than usual. The boy draws in ash by the hearth. Stick figures with swords and dramatically large hats. Mira mends a tear in a blanket older than your memory of cities. You help stack firewood. For once, Mira doesn't inspect your work. You take it as a sign, either trust or resignation. Either way, you'll take it. Dinner is modest again. Bread, the boiled egg, a few scraps of cheese, and Mira's unspoken understanding that it's enough. The boy talks about riding a horse made of clouds. Mira tells him to eat with his mouth closed. You chew slowly, watching the firelight dance across their faces like it's trying to remember them. After the meal, you step outside. The stars are late tonight, hiding behind clouds or doubt. You look anyway. Some part of you still expects a sign, a comet, a glowing door, a phone signal. Nothing comes. Just the wind in the trees and the faint sound of someone sharpening a blade 2 huts over. It's oddly comforting. Lying down on your mat, your back sore, your hands blistered, your mind oddly calm, you whisper, "I still don't know what I'm doing here, but I think I'd miss it if I laughed." For the first time, you don't say it like a joke. You wake to Mira muttering about mice. She's crouched near the grain sack, holding a broom like she's about to either know something or kill it, depending on how this ambush goes. You sit up, still half asleep. The boy whispers that she's been at it since dawn. You ask who's winning. He just shakes his head solemnly. Ember sniffs the corner and promptly loses interest, which tells you all you need to know about his work ethic. Breakfast is thin gruel with a suspicious crunch. You don't ask. Mira's already on her second bowl. The boy says it tastes like boiled secrets. You agree and swallow it like confession. Mira announces it's cleaning day and everyone has a job. The boy tries to claim artistic exemption. Mira says, "Then paint the floor clean." He disappears. Ember follows. You grab a rag, preparing to lose another argument with dust. You're assigned the back wall, which hasn't been scrubbed in years, possibly centuries. You find 3 kinds of cobwebs and a dried lizard that's either a warning or a fossil. The soot comes off slowly, as if personally offended by your attempt at improvement. Mira scrubs beside you without complaint, the rhythm of her arms matching the sound of her breath. You keep pace, mostly. Occasionally you pause to marvel at how much grime can live on a single surface. At midday, Mira takes a break and hands you half a dried pear and some sharp cheese. It tastes like sunlight filtered through stone. The boy reappears, holding a broom and wearing a tunic as a cape. He proudly declares himself Sir Sweep-a-Lot. Mira tells him to sweep or starve. He sweeps badly. Ember finds a sock behind the water barrel and parades it around like he's discovered a relic. You don't have the heart to stop him. The rest of the afternoon is spent shaking out blankets and hauling water. You've never moved so much water in your life. It sloshes, spills, and argues with your arms. Mira says nothing but hands you another bucket when you finish. The boy disappears again. Later, you find him polishing a spoon and calling it his future mirror. You don't ask what for. You're afraid he'll tell you. By the time you sit down, your shirt is soaked, your knees ache, and your hands smell like soap and disappointment. Mira hands you a bowl of broth that's mostly hot water with herbs. You drink it like it's a feast. The boy tries to barter Ember's sock for extra bread. Mira tells him that's not currency in this house. He eats his portion without protest. That's growth. As the sun drops, Mira points to the roof. A patch came loose in the storm 2 nights ago. You climb up with a coil of twine and a handful of reeds. From up here, the village looks like something a child drew, lopsided, charming, full of hidden jokes. You watch smoke curl from chimneys and wonder how many homes have someone like Mira inside, someone who holds everything together with dry hands and even drier humor. You patch the roof poorly, but not fatally. Mira doesn't say much when you come down. Just a look. One of those looks that says, "You tried, I saw, that's enough." The boy offers you half a cookie he saved from market day. You take it. It's stale and perfect. Ember gets the crumbs and chokes slightly. Mira tells him not to be so dramatic. He lies down and sulks. Dinner is late because cleaning never ends. You eat by lamplight, quietly, each chewing like you've earned it. Mira doesn't finish her bowl. You don't ask why. The boy is already snoring in the corner, one arm wrapped around the sock like a teddy bear. Ember stretches and kicks him in the head. He doesn't wake. Later, the boy draws maps on the back of a broken shutter. "For when we go on adventures," he says. You ask where to. "Somewhere no one's been yet." Mira murmurs, like a day without chores. You laugh. Even Ember sneezes at that one. The room hums with something warm. Not joy, too fragile a word, but ease. Earned, slow, rare. You step outside for air. The sky is full of stars, the kind that seem impossibly close. You name one after the smokehouse, another after the boy's map, a third after Mira quietly, just for yourself. You lean on the doorframe and let the night hold you. As the fire dies low behind you and the dark settles softly on your shoulders, you think, "I used to count days like coins, now I just carry them in my pocket and hope I never spend the last one." Somewhere inside, that thought feels heavier than fear and lighter than memory. You wake to the sound of chopping, not gentle, kindling chopping. This is someone taking an axe to a tree with the enthusiasm of a grudge-holding poet. You sit up, blinking at smoke-streaked rafters, and hear Mira muttering curses you don't recognize. The boy is still asleep, mouth open, hugging a small pile of hay like a beloved pet. Ember is nowhere in sight. That's probably a bad sign. You stretch slowly. Everything aches. That's a constant now. Mira walks in carrying 2 logs, sweat on her forehead and sawdust on her coat. She drops them by the hearth and says, "Wood day." You ask, "How much?" She says, "All of it." The boy wakes just in time to groan in protest. Mira hands him a hatchet. He stops groaning. Ember finally reappears, dragging half a branch through the doorway like he personally defeated it in combat. Mira raises an eyebrow. At least someone understands the job. You spend the next few hours hauling logs from the edge of the woods, stacking, splitting, restacking, and wondering how trees ever manage to grow if their destiny is to exhaust you. Mira works without stopping, her rhythm steady and precise. The boy swings his hatchet with great ceremony and little aim. Ember supervises, occasionally chasing a squirrel and returning proud but empty-jawed. You wipe sweat from your eyes with a sleeve that was clean yesterday. At one point, Mira hands you a bigger axe. No words, just an upward nod. You square your stance, grip the handle like it means something, and bring it down. The log splits on the second try. Mira gives you the smallest nod. It feels better than applause. The boy claps anyway. Ember barks, possibly at the log, possibly at you. You bow, no one stops you. That counts as approval. Lunch is bread with garlic and roasted roots. The boy tries to help. You send him to guard Ember, who is currently eating moss. By midday, the worst of the leak is stopped. The boy declares, "You, heroes." Mira says, "Let's see if it holds through tonight." You eat lunch under the awning. Bread, onion, and something pickled that might once have been joyful. The rain softens, then returns. Harder. The boy talks about building a boat. Mira tells him if he finds nails, they'll talk. He looks inspired. You look worried. Back at the hut, everything smells damp. Mira lays out herbs to dry anyway. The boy disappears with a plank, full of ambition. Ember follows him, clearly on board with the shipbuilding plan. You take down the laundry line before the rain can tear it free. Mira watches silently. That's her version of trust. You hang the line inside, above the fire. Clothes drip gently onto the floor. You place a bowl to catch the drops. The rhythm is oddly comforting. The afternoon drags on slowly. Mira sharpens blades and checks seams. You mend a bucket handle with twine and guesswork. The boy returns, soaked but triumphant, holding a crooked board nailed to another. Boat, he says proudly. Mira nods. Sinker, she adds. He grins anyway. Ember sniffs once, then sneezes. No one argues. Dinner is hearty, all things considered. Dried beans, boiled roots, and a splash of oil Mira doles out like currency. You eat quietly, listening to the wind pressing at the shutters. The boy tells a story about a tree that grew upside down and bloomed fish. You ask questions. He answers with confidence and zero facts. Mira chuckles quietly. You pretend not to notice. After the meal, you help dry the floor. The boy sketches sea monsters in the ash. Ember knocks over a boot and curls up in it like a message. Mira stands by the door, watching the rain and dark as if listening for something. You ask what, she says, just checking who's still out there. You don't ask if she means people or memories. Either way, the answer is the same, fewer than there used to be. You lie down next to the hearth, feet warmed by fading embers. Ember pressed close, snoring like a distant sawmill. The boy is already asleep, his drawings curling in the heat. Mira sits with her back against the wall, eyes half closed but not sleeping. You close your own eyes slowly and think, some days are for doing, others are for holding the roof together long enough to start again. And as the rain hushes into a rhythm soft enough to let your breath fall in step, you whisper, today didn't break us. That's enough. For once, the night holds you like it agrees. You wake to stillness, not silence. That doesn't exist here, but a rural truce between chickens, wind, and whoever usually screams at dawn. It's unsettling. Mira is already at the hearth, stirring a pot and humming something too old to have a name. The boy sits cross-legged, trying to tie 2 spoons together with frayed rope. Ember chews on a shoe that's lost all hope. Breakfast is leftover stew and fresh bread. Mira doesn't say where the flour came from. You don't ask. The boy announces today is a feast day, though he can't explain what for. Mira shrugs. Fine, but no dancing before noon. You eat slowly, letting the warmth of the bread say what words can't. Ember gets a scrap and wags his tail like he's been blessed. You believe him. After breakfast, you help Mira tend the garden. The frost has finally lifted, and the soil gives under your boots like a promise. She shows you where to turn the earth, where not to step, how to coax green things from dirt with patience, water, and the occasional threat. The boy plants a bean and names it George. Mira says, don't name the food. The boy says, George is a survivor. You believe that, too. Later, Tom arrives with a wheelbarrow full of old tools and a suspicious grin. Trade day, he says. Mira eyes the goods like a hawk choosing which rabbit is lying. You offer a bundle of dried herbs and a carved spoon that's mostly symmetrical. Tom laughs. You've been civilized. Barely, you say. He takes the spoon. You get nails and a story in return. A fair deal. Lunch is simple. Onions, broth, and something that almost tastes like chicken. The boy asks if it had feathers. Mira says, probably. You eat without complaint. Ember tries to climb onto the bench and is denied with a firm nudge. He sulks into a pile of rags and dreams of vengeance. The boy asks if you're staying forever. You say, I haven't left yet. That's close enough to the truth. In the afternoon, Mira sends you to the woods to gather kindling. The boy tags along, armed with a stick and heroic intentions. Ember patrols the edges, occasionally chasing shadows and returning victorious. The woods are bright and full of sounds you've come to recognize. Birds, bugs, wind through the branches. You find yourself walking slower, not because you're tired, but because you're not rushing. It's the kind of peace that asks for nothing in return. Back home, you stack the wood neatly, and Mira actually says, good. Not a grunt, not a glance, a word. You almost drop the next log from shock. The boy crowns you with a wreath of leaves for excellence, he says. Ember steals it immediately. You let him. Mira doesn't roll her eyes this time. That's practically applause. Dinner is a little better than usual. Mira used the last of the vinegar. The boy says it tastes like celebration. Mira says it tastes like finishing. You clean the bowls while she sits outside, eyes on the sky. The boy falls asleep mid-hiccup. Ember curls beside him like punctuation. You bring Mira a cup of water and sit beside her, shoulder to shoulder, no words exchanged. The stars come out slowly, careful not to crowd the sky. The moon is thin and sharp, like it's listening. Mira finally says, "You could have left." You nod. She adds, "But you didn't." You nod again. That's all there is to it. That's everything. The wind is soft tonight. The village is quiet. Even the chickens have surrendered. Later, when the fire burns low and Ember shifts in his sleep, and the boy murmurs about dragons made of bread, you lie down and pull the blanket over your shoulder like a memory. You close your eyes and think, I came here as a visitor. I'm not sure what I am now, but I know I belong to something. And as the night folds itself around the roof you helped mend, the floor you swept, and the people who stopped expecting you to leave, you whisper into the dark, I didn't last a day. I stayed anyway. Thank you truly for listening all the way to the end. Whether you're still awake or already slipping into dreams, know that I'll always be here, with quiet tales from long ago and a voice you'll grow to recognize. Wishing you a peaceful night, and I hope we meet again on another night for another quiet journey through the past.